you, Mr. Mayor. We are recording.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Good evening, everyone. We'll now call the special council meeting Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 to order. Any late additions or deletions for the agenda?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Someone please move that the February 8th special council meeting agenda be adopted. Councillor Hopfull, second Councillor Howe. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Now I'll transition to item 3.1, zoning amendment bylaw 2022-001, 103 Main Street, public hearing. I'll now call the public hearing meeting to order. Be advised that the notice of this public hearing was advertised in the Bridge River Lillooet News in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act and posted to the district's website and Facebook. I now read out the process guidelines, which I'm required to do. The public hearing is being convened pursuant to section 464 of the Local Government Act. District of Lillooet bylaw number 2022-001. The proposed bylaws and related information, including written comments received to date, if any, is available as part of the agenda package for review. At this public hearing, all persons wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to be heard. However, I ask that all who speak in this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw. Those wishing to speak at this public hearing commence their remarks by stating their name, and that written comments be submitted to staff table before closure of this public hearing. I'd like to remind everyone present that those in attendance who choose to speak should be free to do so without comment, support, or derision from the gallery. The purpose of the public hearing is for council to hear everyone's opinion on the subject at hand to help in their decision-making process. To that end, I ask that members of the gallery forego cheering, clapping, comments of support, booing, jeering, and disparaging comments. Everyone should feel free and comfortable to make the representation of the council. Mr. Taylor, now ask if you're outlining the specifics of the proposed bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Z21-006 is an application for the property in the North Industrial Area located at 103 Main Street for a site-specific zoning provision to add animal hospital as a permitted use. As council is aware, the veterinarian has recently lost tenancy at their commercial space and have been looking for a new location to operate their important community service. The owner of the Old Mugs and Jugs restaurant has offered up their structure and has already been in conversation with the building official to determine the steps required to bring the building up to the appropriate code to change the use to accommodate the vet. It is a fairly common practice to have a vet as a permitted use in the industrial zones. In the communities of Ashcroft, Merritt, 100 Mile House, and Penticton all allow for this, and I'm sure if we cast a wider net, we would find others include this use as well. The site-specific zoning being proposed includes a few provisions to allow for the smooth transition of this service, including the removal of the requirement to install an oil water separator on the already paved parking area, and the reduction of the interior side setback to legitimize the existing building on the site. A building permit will be required to accommodate the change of use, and the applicant is well aware of this requirement. Mr. Mayor, at this point, it is appropriate to ask the applicant to speak. If they have anything, and then appropriate to open it up to the floor to make comments but not ask questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I now declare this public hearing open. Does the proponent have any comments to make?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Doug Grossler from Lillooet Contracting. I'm used to doing something like this, but I guess I'm hoping to change this site-specific zoning to meet the needs of our local veterinarian who I've known and went to school with, who I sort of feel is a pretty desired service, and I don't think it's really going to cause any issue as far as being an already light industrial. I think that really a small animal, we're not talking large animal, small animals I think should fit in there, and I don't think it really is going to cause anybody any harm. I think it's generally fairly quiet with sitting in residential area in its last thing, and I don't think that there were anybody causing or felt that there was any harm not that I'm aware of anyway. So anyway, I'm just hoping that you'll consider that, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Crosler. At this time, I ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaws. After you've spoken once, I would ask that you wait until all other members of the public have had the opportunity to be heard before speaking a second time. And please, if you come forward to the lectern to speak.
Thank you. Vivian Burke-Jones, just here as a citizen and pet owner. We so need this clinic still operating here in Lillooet, so I fully support this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Burke-Jones. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this proposed bylaw? For a third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak further to this proposed bylaw? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. I'll require council to move that all written and verbal submissions regarding bylaw number 2022-001 up to including January 18th, 2022 be received and the public hearing be closed. Who moves? Councillor Weems, second. Councillor Leach. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, and thank you. And now, back to our special council meeting. Item number 4, resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to add from the public hearing report, other that staff do recommend that this bylaw be given third reading and finally adopted at this meeting.
Thank you. Taylor. Somebody to move that the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 218-018, number 454, amending bylaw number 2022-001 be read a third time. Councillor Howe, second. Councillor Weed. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Carry. And someone to move that the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018, number 454, amending bylaw number 2022-001 be adopted. Councillor Hoffel and second. Councillor Howe. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carry. Thank you. The meeting is open to questions from the media or public. Hearing none, I would require that someone move that the February 2022 special council meeting be adjourned. Councillor Leach, second. Councillor Hoffel. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We now move to the committee of the whole meeting. I'll now call the committee of the whole meeting Tuesday, February 2022 to order. Are there any late additions or deletions to this agenda?
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, will someone please move that the February 2022 committee of the whole agenda be adopted? Councillor Weed, second. Councillor Leach. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have delegation. Thankfully, we have Interior Health Authority delegation. Heidi and Ian.
Heidi and Ian, if you would please turn on your cameras and your microphones at this point, the floor is yours.
I would just like to make an introduction briefly when they come online. Good evening, Ian. Good evening, Heidi.
Good evening, everybody.
Just for the purposes of introduction, on the far right-hand side is Councillor Weed. Next to her, beside me, is Councillor Leach. On the far left-hand side is Councillor Hoffel, and closest to me on the left is Councillor Howe. I really appreciate you folks coming and briefing us in terms of update on our Lillooet primary health care. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite today and happy to be here. If I may, just like to share my screen to put a PowerPoint presentation up. And just confirming everybody can see that.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, everyone. Firstly, thank you for having us and the invite to come and speak tonight about the Lillooet Primary Care, as well as some, we're going to go through some updates with COVID, as well as the health clinic as well. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Ian Wood. I'm the Director of Clinical Operations for Thompson South Caribou Primary Community Care. I have a responsibility over sites in throughout many rural areas, Thompson South Caribou, and also primary care in Kamloops, so the primary care clinics in Kamloops. And just move it to Heidi so she can introduce herself.
Thanks, Ian. My name's Heidi Schilling. I'm the operations manager for Clearwater, Barrier, and Blue River. I'm also still supporting Lillooet and Lytton until the new manager is able to take over March 7th. So I'm happy to be here and providing you an update to primary care as it's continuing to support your community. So thanks for having us today.
Thanks, Heidi. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the First Nations on which we meet today, as we're all calling in from likely different areas. Also to acknowledge our partnership with Métis Nation BC and the Métis citizens residing in the interior. Firstly, I'd just like to do a quick overview of some strategic priorities IH put forward for 2021 to 2024. As we turn our attention to the future and part of the provincial and national healthcare transformation, Interior Health is working to shift the focus of healthcare from acute and long-term care facilities to community-based programs and services. Our focus is on key population needs, to reduce the growth and demand on acute care capacity, and improve the overall health and well-being of the people, families, and communities we work with. Our strategic priorities incorporate previous key strategic BC Ministry of Health direction and other priorities identified by the IH senior executive team. So just a couple examples here for our population health. We put some COVID measures in throughout the COVID pandemic, and focusing in the future, we'll be looking at putting in a long haul clinic. So individuals that will be suffering from the long-term effects of COVID and setting up clinics throughout the province. Dr. Calder's done a lot of work with IH to date. Currently, there is no formal clinic in place, but something we'll be looking at. Climate change is a big one for us to be looking at as we look into the future as well. We've seen the impacts with many of our communities, as you guys know. We've had evacuations as well as Lytton devastation earlier this last year, and then even Merritt as well. And these all hit our portfolio. These are our communities that we support, so very close to our heart to ensure that there's a team available to address this and prepare. Primary care, we've talked about a little bit earlier. We are currently wave 3 of the primary care network. Ministry of Health is currently looking at our expression of interest we put forward. It's a little bit of a unique plan with our rural sites, as it's something the ministry's never seen due to the amount of First Nation Indigenous individuals in our catchment area. So it's a little bit exciting. We'll be trend setting a little bit and bringing some new ideas to the ministry and how we should be providing primary care for people in the community. We have in August, we saw the first IH owned and operated primary clinic in Lillooet, not the first IH clinic, but the first one that is owned and operated in Lillooet by IH. Seniors care is very important. We have a dedicated team leading specialized community services for seniors. It's centralized in the Thompson area, but has outreaches into our rural sites, and they're supporting us with the work they're doing there. Aboriginal health and wellness, as mentioned, there are a high number of First Nations communities in Lillooet, and strong partnerships with these individuals is key to provide culturally appropriate and safe care. As we know, mental health and substance use, COVID took a little bit of that away from us, over a little bit of the highlight away from overdose response and prevention. Of that work has not stopped. We do have an opioid antagonist therapy clinic that has been successful in the community, focused on increasing access to the services going into 2022. Technology is something that we were kind of forced into doing with our COVID pandemic we've had, and how do we leverage some of those learnings that we've got over the last couple of years. Recently, we've included it's a virtual physician for the emergency department in times where we may need it. It's called Rudy, and we've actually implemented that with some success in the most recent months, and something we're looking at implementing in other EDs throughout the portfolio. Division of Family Practice, I think just wanted to have a quick slide on them. We work very closely with the divisions. The divisions are a group of physicians that formally came together to work on improving population health outcomes in the geographical area they work in. This includes collective planning and partnership with the health authority teams. The divisions support local physician teams in their planning and recruitment efforts. As most people do know, Bev Grosler was the chapter lead for the Lillooet division, Lillooet-Lytton division, and Chris Dreyer, who is a former pharmacist in the Lytton area, has taken the position and will be leading the work on behalf of the divisions in the Lillooet chapter. IH does work closely with the Division of Family Practices in all aspects of healthcare in the Lillooet community. We also have partnerships with the First Nations communities, and we have a meeting, myself and Heidi, with Statliam Nation around a letter of understanding table. And here we have collaborative discussions to identify population health challenges, look at addressing gaps in services, as well as explore more partnerships and opportunities where we can work together to address some of these gaps that we're seeing. Local health planning tables are something we've introduced to the rural communities of late, and what we're doing with these is the health planning tables are committed to fostering a healthy community. And by doing this, we're supporting partners in recruitment and retention of initiatives in achieving the health professional supports required in the Lillooet catchment area. We're leading community engagement through the work in the community with advocacy and education regarding community health, identifying and addressing gaps related to community health as well, and informing the Interior Rural Collaborative Services Committee on Lillooet catchment area needs through local health service planning. And the Interior Rural Collaborative Service Committee is a smaller group that incorporates all of the rural sites that support our portfolio. Community members are municipal representatives. We do have members from the Statliam Nation, as well as local community health directors invited. Rural and Remote Family Division of Family Practice, IH, and Patient Voices Network. Every once in a while, we'll have some ad hoc individuals come in. It might be BC Ambulance, the Fire Department, RCMP, Ministry of Health Liaison will come and visit us once in a while if we're requesting, and as well as IH Strategic Information and Communications will drop in once in a while. The frequency of these meetings is bi-monthly, so we see it about every 2 weeks, and if needed, we will do more, and it just happens to be our next meeting's only a week away. The Lillooet Health and Hospital and Health Center, I do believe it is probably one of the small sites in BC to offer surgical services. Currently, these are on hold due to some physician recruitment measures that we're putting in place. We do have 2 physicians in Lillooet right now that are providing services for the emergency department, inpatient unit, long-term care, as well as the primary care clinic. We have a nurse practitioner in town who works out of the primary care clinic, but also does outreach into the First Nations communities around the Lillooet area. The inpatient unit, which we've currently put out notification that they're being emptied to address any staffing concerns we have with the most recent wave of COVID. We'll be bringing those back online hopefully very soon, as soon as we get the direction to do so. Mountain View Lodge is a 21-bed facility with a 1 respite, so I put 22 beds there. It is full, almost at 100% capacity throughout the year, where there is a wait list to get in there. And then we have other services as well: mental health, home health, lab x-ray, and some physiotherapy, allied health type services. The COVID update. So I can let you know right now that as of this morning, there are roughly around 20 active cases in the community. And now we don't rely on these as actual stats for the community, because rapid testing has really put a skew into some of the information we're getting, because people are taking rapid tests home, self-isolating after they test positive, but not necessarily reporting that they've had a positive test. So the numbers we're getting, we take with a grain of salt, knowing that it's probably over what has actually been stated. As we look at vaccines, currently to date, we have seen 10,872,777 doses administered in BC. Within Interior Health, we've seen 1,656,276. And in Lillooet specifically, currently vaccinated, we have percentages and not numbers. Dose 1, we have 85.1%. Those that have received the second dose are 84%. And booster, we're about half at 47.6% people having received the booster to date as well. I have a couple links I can put in the chat later if you would like, on how to book a vaccine. And really the best thing we can be doing to get ahead of this is ensuring people have access to vaccine to try to slow those transmission rates. A little bit of an overview about about the vaccines is dose 1 and dose 2 are walk-in at any clinic. There's no need to book. If you are 5 to 11 as of December 1st, you need to book an appointment. So 12 and up, you don't need to. You can do a walk-in for dose 1 and 2. 5 to 11, you need an appointment. 12 to 17, 6-month boosters after second dose, and all this information is on the sites that the links I can send out. Pregnant people 18 and over can get a booster 6 months after their second dose, and 5 to 11 all need to be booked. So between the ages of 5 and 11, these are not walk-in. You will need to go online and book an appointment after getting notification that you are good to do so. The next vaccine clinics in Lillooet are February 10th, 17th, and 24th. 0900 to 3:30 p.m. They're closed for about an hour there at lunch, though. Testing right now in Lillooet is, we do have 2 different ways of doing this now. As I spoke about earlier, the rapid antigen tests, or RATs, can be available to be picked up at the testing center. They're available at the front door. It takes about 20 minutes for those results to come in after you do them yourself. The testing center is open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and from 10 to 12. And we've increased the number of spots depending on demand, but as of late, we've seen a decrease in the amount of individuals trying to access the testing, and likely because of the rapid antigen tests. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to Heidi for a little bit about the Lillooet Primary Care Clinic that we have there.
Thanks, Ian. So for our primary care clinic, we are IH owned and operated since August when we took over. So there's still work to be done around the operational requirements that I'm working with the site and the physician. We have 2 permanent physicians that work for us at the site. We do have 2 PRAs, practice ready assessment physicians, coming mid-March, who will join our team. They will be working primary care, ED, inpatient, as well as helping us support long-term care. So we're looking forward to those 2 joining. We also, as Ian mentioned, have our NP that works out of the primary care clinic 2 days a week, and the other 3 days she's out in First Nation communities. And folks can book appointments, so nothing has changed in regards to when it was a private clinic. Anyone can phone and book an appointment. If you have a preference over what physician that you would like to see, you can certainly ask. One wait list might be longer than another just due to availability. There is both face-to-face and virtual appointments available to any callers. Thankfully, we are augmenting with 3 of our local physicians that have come on board. They're helping with primary care as well as the ED rotation and long-term care. So we're certainly happy to have those locums helping us out. So I think that's probably what I can provide you with an update, and unless you folks have any questions for Ian or I.
Thank you both. I'll check with council to see if there's any clarification or interest in terms of more information. Council? Councillor Weed?
Yes, through the mayor, is there a shortage of lab techs, or is there a situation at the hospital that now we have to phone in to book an appointment for blood work or x-rays or EKGs, that sort of thing, or will there be more lab techs coming on?
Heidi, I will leave that one for you to answer.
Sure. So there is a lab shortage ongoing. It's across Canada, and certainly we're seeing it in Interior Health across many communities. So we're actively recruiting into the lab positions. We are seeing lab techs coming to help us and staying in our nursing residence, which we're very grateful to have the nursing residence because we know accommodation is hard to find in the community. So we hope that at most time, if not all the time, that we will have lab services available. What you will notice is there has been a change, and the change has been actually in place across Interior Health for a couple of years now, where lab has an automated booking system. And so I encourage you all to use that system. We're trying to move away from walk-in appointments and phoning the hospital to book an appointment. And move more towards the electronic appointment booking system. And I have that information. Jeff Harrison, our PPL practice lead for lab, has provided that information out, but I certainly can provide the booking number for you folks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
From my perspective, as I say, it's encouraging to hear that the table, primary healthcare table, is trend setting. Unfortunately, from my perspective, I don't deal very well with very large groups. I get very impatient, but that's just my personality. However, I really want to tie up with you folks, and I think you have an interim manager now, Jeffrey Harrison, but he's interim only. Is that Heidi? That's to replace you, and then there's a permanent manager coming?
Yes, and so I can answer that one. And yeah, so that announcement came out today, Mayor, and we sent it off, but not too many people know about that yet. So that's hot off the presses. Jeffrey Harrison has accepted the position as interim manager clinical operations for the Lillooet and Lytton portfolio. It's an opportunity for him and myself to see if we can make this gel, and if things go well, he'll take it permanently. So this is not, it's more of a trial situation to see how it goes for him, and if things go well, he'll be sticking around for a long time, which is our hope. Good,
that's encouraging to hear. Otherwise, I'm going to say, do we pay attention to him or don't we? So you've answered the critical question.
Yeah, I think for now he's a good guy to pay attention to.
As I say, from my perspective, I'd like to get us trend setting in this community in terms of care for our hospital as well as the clinic. And if somehow we can break away a little bit from the primary healthcare table to focus on what we feel we need, and then the how-tos to get there, which would come from you folks. And being able to put a plan together to approach the Ministry of Health in terms of upgrading our hospital, the clinic. I really wanted, we got to go bigger, we got to go home. And the big concern, I know Heidi put me at ease. I kept saying, are you guys, centralizing us so that we end up like Ashcroft and everything goes to Kamloops now? I'm not going to be critical because COVID, because of staff shortages, and so on and so forth. But we've been dealing with staff shortages from prior to 2008 healthcare professionals, what I mean. Housing is something, accommodation is something we have to do, and we are aligning to get that done. Whether it's fast enough or not, it's something we're going to do. But I, on a personal note, want to work with yourself, Jeffrey, in terms of saying, hey, what can we do to carry it a little farther, a little faster, and approach the Ministry of Health with something serious for our community. We have a beautiful hospital, 33 beds, down to 6. I'm fearful of losing that service. We've got a great lab, we've got a great x-ray, everything. So we're very cognizant of our ability that we may lose it, and we don't want to lose it. We'll do what it takes to keep it and enhance it. Clinic is the other thing. The building that the present clinic is in is not appropriate, and I want to work with you folk, Interior Health, but specifically Ministry of Health, and say, okay, what can and what will we do about it, and make a concrete plan that our community can embrace and understand and going forward. So that's essentially where I'm coming from, my perspective on it. Councillor Leach?
I wanted to talk specifically about staffing shortages because it's been an ongoing problem prior to COVID, and we've just seen it kind of blow up a bit with the care beds being put on pause. But a couple of weeks ago, just for some background information of where I'm coming from, I was listening to CBC Radio The Current, and they had interviewed a nurse who had taken all of her nursing programs, courses, graduated university, etc., but it was from an accredited place overseas, and she wanted to come and work in Canada, and I guess licensing is very, very tough for educated people from other countries to come into Canada. So I'm just wondering, is it something, because, and I mean, and I follow all of the job postings for the Lillooet area specifically, and I've in the last year followed how many openings there are for nurses and doctors and physicians and anesthesiologists in Interior Health. Is it something that Interior Health has looked at to pushing back on, I don't know if it's provincial or federal, who say, yes, you can work in Canada, or no, you can't, to get folks who want to work and live in Canada who can fill these services, since we can't seem to push them through university fast enough?
So this is the first I've heard of people having difficulty getting licensing in Canada from other countries, and likely because it gets paused at the regulating body of BCCNM, where they have to go through to get licensed in order to be hired as a nurse, and that varies by province and by province to province. This is definitely something I think maybe we should be looking at, and possibly an opportunity coming up with the bargaining agreement with BCNU and the province here in the spring. I don't know if this is at the table, but I would be comfortable bringing this up with our labor relations team to see if they're hearing this from other places as well, because I think you're right. Is there a way that we can expedite these individuals getting their license so we can get them working sooner as opposed to seeing a delay?
I appreciate that, Ian, and if you would like, I can through staff forward you the podcast, because it's an hour-long interview that this person had. So there's some interesting points in it, and it might be beneficial to bring up at a higher level meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Howell?
Yes, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time. Through the Mayor, I would like to ask, albeit that is Councillor Leach brings up a wonderful suggestion, and I think it's worth its merit. I've heard something similar for many years now, so I really would like to see that being looked at. Saying that, I would also like to know, because we have laid off numerous staff, and by we, I mean the province has laid off many staff members who already live, reside, and have grown up in Canada and in BC, who no longer work for our healthcare systems due to their own personal health choices. Now, that's neither here nor there. However, They already live here, they have families here. Why is there no other consideration being looked at as to what we could do to help them integrate back into the system? Rapid testing, goodness knows we have those available to us. I don't know what discussions have been had behind the scenes. Obviously, I'm not privy to those, but I would like to know a little bit more about that. We've lost so many wonderfully educated members.
And that, I don't have an answer for that either. It is something that we toss around in our conversations as well, as we find it difficult to go through these shortages and know we have people that are willing to work. As it has been handed down from us through the ministry as direction that we need to be doing this, we have had conversations for sure about what other things can people be doing in healthcare that maybe might be opportunities to get them back in the workforce. We know at some point this pandemic will end and we'll be looking at employing more individuals, and will those be part of our future as well? So I don't know how many exactly we ended up losing as a result of the mandate, because I do believe that is what we're talking about. But I do know it was not a large amount. It was a small percentage of individuals that unfortunately we did lose in our workforce.
Thank you. Councillor Leach.
Just to add on to Councillor Howell's comment, just for information purposes only, Canada Post also has a mandate for workers to be vaccinated, and that's what Councillor was talking about. And those who are not vaccinated are still allowed to work if they produce 2 negative rapid tests per week. And I do know of individuals who are using that method to come to and work safely in the company, and it seems to be working out quite well. So if a federally regulated body can put an alternative for workers in, it should be something that Interior Health can as well.
Thank you. Councillor Leach. Okay. I'd like to say thank you very much to Ms. Schilling and Mr. Wood, both of you, for coming. It's greatly appreciated. Heidi, good luck in your new position. I'd like to say sorry to see you go. We didn't have enough time here to really get to know each other like we should, and we'll definitely do that with Jeffrey as soon as our group hub gets open here. So again, thanks to both of you. It's greatly appreciated, and I'll repeat myself. I really want to work with you people and start out with Jeffrey to put a plan together what we can and want to do here in Lillooet, and as I say, a little bit of go big or go home, and we will participate in the primary care health table, but I would like to see a little bit more in terms of focus on what we'll do with our hospital and the clinic. Kudos to you for coming here. Greatly appreciated, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, you guys.
Yeah, thank you, folks. It's been a pleasure working with you. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll move to item 3.2. Ms. Denbach, update on economic development activities and discussion of Caribou Chilcotin Coast Tourism 3% Municipal and Regional District Act. Good
Good
evening.
evening, everyone.
Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I'm going to share a presentation as well. Let's see. There we go. That should be it. How's that? Can everybody see that?
Thank you.
Awesome. So I appreciate the opportunity to just share with you some of the highlights since the position of Economic Development Liaison was established. It was about Well, it was right around April, May 2020, just after the pandemic was announced. And so we had the rest of 2020 and now all of 2021 behind us to be able to dive into economic development and what that looks like today in Lillooet, but also what it can look like in the future. So at the end of 2020, you would have seen this before. I think the last time that I was able to sort of officially come before you and give you an update. In 2020, we put together basically a 3-stage economic recovery plan. The first stage was to gather and share information, then identify the immediate threats and recovery opportunities, and then begin a process of planning for longer-term resiliency. So I just very briefly want to go back over that context, and then that'll sort of inform the work that we undertook in 2021. At the early in 2020, when we started this journey together, there were lots of conversations with local businesses, with the chamber, with the Historical Society and Museum, with Miyazaki House, Tourism Lillooet. And we were really seeing that COVID was having a mixed impact. Some businesses, particularly in tourism, were of course seeing declines, but others were doing really well. They were having record years. So, you know, part of gathering and sharing that information was simply to get word out about all the different support programs that were literally coming out weekly from various levels of government, and then using the district website as that central resource. Then we, in addition to that, did a lot of work around better practices, so the safe and responsible travel messaging, looking at getting the visitor center open and how to do that what's on, what's open information, buy local programs. We undertook a resident sentiment survey as well to see, sort of to feel the temperature of our resident base in terms of promoting Lillooet for the summer of 2020, when we were able to reopen to travelers within the province, if that was something that would be deemed acceptable. And by and large it was. And so of course that's when we were able to activate some tourism programs and the new Tourism Lillooet website, visitlillooet.ca. So a lot of work done just gathering information and listening. And then activating a couple of immediate opportunities. The first was around tourism, and knowing that we needed to have a more appealing, sort of fresher messaging out to the marketplace, so that the district, you'll recall, provided some support to Tourism Lillooet to undertake an improvement, a redesign of the website and a social media campaign. Then after that, you know, we kind of settled into looking at the longer term for Lillooet. So there is an economic development advisory committee, was formed around August, September 2020. We have a terms of reference, and we have really great representation from across the community. And I really want to thank all the individuals that participate on that committee. We have we have monthly meetings. And we have small business representation. We have retail sector. We've got BC
Suzanne,
Hydro.
can I please interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
We are still seeing the title.
It's not advancing?
No, we're seeing the title. I think you shared the program rather than the actual PowerPoint itself, so it's not progressing through the slides with you.
Oh, I'm glad you stopped me. Let me try that again. Okay. No, you should be able to. Okay. So what do you see now? Sorry, I need to.
There we go.
Can you go to another slide so we can see if it's changing, please?
No, it's not changing. All right.
Suzanne, do you want me to run the PowerPoint? You can just let me know when to switch slides.
We could do that, sure. So when I open the share tray, I'm sharing.
Mr. Taylor works cost plus 10%.
Yeah, you know, I think that might be for the best if you don't mind doing that. My apologies that it's not advancing.
No worries, we'll get it.
Okay, because I'm about 10 slides in now. However, it was all history, so we can just, if we could advance to the slide, it's slide 6, it says plan for long-term resiliency.
You'll be glad to know it's not working for me either. So.
Oh. I feel better, actually.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Okay, so
which slide are you on, Susan?
was 6, so a couple more ahead. So this was just a summary of sort of the work that we did as we got started in 2020. The next, there we are, that one. So yeah, a really, really great group of engaged folks that the role is really to be a sounding board and to brainstorm and to talk about opportunities. And it's a really good mix across the sectors, small and large, and profit and nonprofit sectors. So without listing them all one by one, I just really want to acknowledge the contribution that they make to sort of the robustness of the work that we do in it for economic development. So we go to the next slide. The committee met monthly, and we covered a lot of ground from the OCP discussions, the Innovation Hub concept, just a monthly discussion of what was happening on the ground and what everyone was seeing in their businesses, the current opportunities. And then we started talking about this long-term plan. And in 2021, our work plan that we had originally submitted to NDIT, the thought was that we would identify 3 priority sectors and put together attraction campaigns for those sectors to attract new investors, new residents. And as well, also the committee reflected on the importance of retaining our current base of business, that as folks, were thinking of retiring or selling their business, that there was a real need and an opportunity to support that process so that we kept our current base of business and didn't lose any. So we were sort of focused on both ends of that spectrum. But as we went through the discussions with the committee, it became clear that it wasn't a simple task to choose those 3 sectors, that in fact, what we needed to do was go back to the community themselves and say, what is your vision for the future of Lillooet? There are so many routes and so many directions that we could take. And the committee, quite rightly said, I don't think we're in a position to answer that question. Let's go back. And so that led to a community survey that was out in sort of September, October, November timeframe. And so I want to share with you the results of that survey and how that then is played into, at the end of 2021, we created a framework to guide economic development activities for the next 2 to 3 years in Lillooet. So if we could just advance. Some of the other work as well, in addition to those discussions about our priority sectors for economic development and this community survey, we continued to build our knowledge, our relationships of the Statlium economic development initiatives. We started quarterly meetings with ECDev reps from all the Statlium communities. Now, we don't have, the timing is always challenging, so we don't have everyone at every meeting. But now there's an Excel workbook, so every community has a page, and it's intended to be a tool for all of us in economic development, just to have a better understanding of who's working on what, and what each community feels are its priorities, with the intention that if we lay that out in front of us, we can see those sweet spots where it actually would make more sense for us to work together than to work in our independent silos. So That's been a good exercise. We've had, in particular, Haklip and Hoyston have been very active working with us. But the invitation is open to all the ACTEV folks and all the Statlium communities to come and join us. And also the ACTEV rep from the SLRD participates in those meetings as well. A couple of the other highlights from 2021, the Range Beyond Range Circle Tour was launched. That's you've seen, I think you've seen me present that before, but that's a circle tour in partnership with Tourism Pemberton and the Bridge River Valley, and really featuring that circle tour from the Duffy Lake Road through Lillooet Road 40, and then if you've got the right vehicle, you can go across the Hurley back into the Pemberton Valley. So that will continue in 2022. We had some funds to carry over, and Destination BC has supported us again in 2022. And with that program, we really want to expand it to have more Statlium presence as well. There is a Statlium acknowledgement, of course, as there is on the website, the visit lillooet.ca website. But in speaking with Christina Ledoux at Hoyston, they're hoping to open Hoyston Experience Tours for this summer, and I guess we'll see what develops at the campground, if there is a Sequowash cultural experience eventually that will be offered there. So, and also in Shalath, Liltem Mountain Hotel, they're very interested in promoting that as they look to expand beyond just housing BC Hydro and starting to have a more transient tourism economy there as well. The other thing that was a highlight in 2021 was our collective work on responsible tourism and the messaging that went out, again, with the support of Lillooet and Region Invasive Species, and using a template from the Bridge River Valley, we were able to get out some really strong messaging about, yes, come and visit us, but please do so responsibly. This is our home. So if we could go forward. Other things that happened, some larger, sort of longer term opportunities. We did secure the Tourism Dependent Communities Grant. It was almost $1 million. And I'm sure as you all well know, that's underway now with Sequowash and Antares. There was a feasibility study for the Statlium Cultural Center that has been shared with the Lillooet Tribal Council chiefs. And they had a meeting, I understand, just last Friday, the 4th of February. So I'm hoping to hear soon about some next steps to be able to continue to progress that concept of working collaboratively on a fully integrated facility as part of a renovation of the rec center that would see that really become the heart of Lillooet and a really tangible representation of communities working together and what reconciliation in action looks like. And then just most recently, there's been some interesting developments in working with Haklip. Lyle Leo is in charge of ACTEV there, and also with Florence Jack in Hoyston, activating a trail network, which, I mean, I call it a circle tour, but it's actually more of the shape of a key, because it would start at Fountain Flats and run along, the idea is a trail network along the river, take you, with beautiful vistas of the river, the mountains, interpretive signage, shelters and spots for shade along the way. You stop at Fort Barons, you go across the river, you come through, and you can stop at the campground if there's some cultural experiences there. You head into downtown Lillooet and enjoy the shops and restaurants, head out to Hoyston Experience Tours, and then come back, cross Old Bridge, and then finish your circle tour, with the idea that piece of infrastructure would really create a destination experience that potentially would have visitors coming specifically to do that. There could be e-bike rentals, there could be all sorts of great things that happen. So very, very early discussions in terms of sort of a consortium looking at that. Haklip is pursuing the Tourism Relief Fund to get some grant money for the Fountain Flats, kind of a landing site for tourism activity for their community. And the Active Transportation Grant was just announced again as being open. So not entirely sure where that's going, but some really interesting discussions happening with our neighboring communities. So if we could advance again. So coming back now to these sectors in the community survey, we really wanted to probe why Lillooet. So what is unique and special? Like, we know Lillooet is unique and special, but the messaging that has been used to a degree in the past, that Lillooet has it all, is really far too broad and too generic. It doesn't really allow us to stand out. So we asked residents what they saw, what their vision for the future of Lillooet's economy was, and we asked them what made this place special to them. And so I'll share that with you, because that became sort of the heart of the framework. That I'd also just like to share the highlights of that framework and then get some feedback from you to see if that resonates with your broader vision for the community, and where you, as the elected leadership, sees Lillooet going. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, and actually, in the interest of time, I don't think I'll go through this. There is a document, a framework document that is available, and if you don't already have it, happy to share it. But we looked at strengths and challenges and opportunities. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, because you know this as better than anyone. We've got some strengths in our location. Our real estate is affordable relative to the Lower Mainland, but there's not much available right now. We have hospitals and schools, but we have challenges, as we just heard earlier, with staffing of doctors and nurses. We've got world-class recreation. Let's just go to the next slide. There's infrastructure improvements happening, and bandwidth. We've got history and heritage. We've got a great climate for agriculture. We've got geology. We've got BC Hydro making multi-million-dollar investments in capital. So lots and lots of strengths to play to in economic development. Next slide. And great people. So great volunteer base, a strong sense of place and community, that is also really reflected in our artists and artisans, which really, it gives character to a community, much more so than even the businesses in the community. Although those two are held very close to the heart of this community. When we probed, the nature of retail development, there's a very, very strong support for locally owned and unique businesses, as opposed to sort of chains and box stores. So we looked at opportunities and challenges too. And again, you're familiar with them. If we go to the next slide. We still have some access challenges, housing, empty storefronts, and a downtown that is in need of revitalization. Next slide. Lots of not-for-profit groups, and some collaboration happening, but lots of small groups that are still struggling for resources, that don't quite have the scale to get done the work that needs to be to get done. And then our, the extractive industries like forestry, challenged with high-value timber remaining, that it's limited and it's costly to harvest. And then a lot of the money that BC Hydro will be spending is on very specialized skills. So, those skills that potentially aren't in our core resident base and will have to be brought in from outside. So it will be more challenging to keep some of that benefit local, but we certainly want to explore that with BC Hydro. Next slide. Opportunities, build our relationships, continue to build our relationships with the Statlium, with our industry players, with Hydro. And next slide. Retain our current base of business, and then look at new amenities as we consider attracting investors and residents. That decision now, in the past, it was often based on where you could get a job. Now, with a very transient workforce and people that can be virtual commuters, it's much more important to offer really great amenities for residents and investors, so that they want to live here, and they'll bring their business and they'll bring their job with them. And we have opportunities, of course, in agriculture and viticulture, opportunities for people that want to have a lifestyle, whether they're here with families and children or retirees. Next slide. So these were the survey results. I have detailed results, but this is just like top line. So if you have any questions about the more detailed results, happy to share that with you too. We had 187 responses, so that's a decent turnout. And I really have to thank Kim North and the Innovation Hub for taking the survey out to the farmers market and having it there on Main Street by the post office. We had good cross-section of folks that have lived here more than 20 years, and then folks that are, less than 1 year, 3 to 5 years, like a really good mix. I don't feel like the results were skewed in any way. And same with age groups, really good representation. I even reached out to the high school and asked the principal there to have the high school students complete the survey. So we have survey results from some folks that are under 18 as well. Next slide. And two of the most important questions when we were struggling with we have some funds in the budget to specifically target 2 or 3 sectors that we want to put together attraction campaigns for. But we wanted to ask residents of Lillooet, what is the priority? And their top 5, and this was widely held, there was really quite broad agreement that the top 5, and these are well, they are in order, but I would suggest they're all quite important. Tourism, agritourism, and cultural tourism, agriculture and viticulture, healthcare and wellness was ranked very high, retirement living, and work from anywhere virtual commuters. So it was great to have interior health, for me to be able to listen in and listen to interior health's plans, because the idea of Lillooet's economic future being as a health and wellness center was, there were a lot of survey responses in the narrative. The open-ended comments were reflecting on that if we could really make a significant, put our stake in the ground in health and wellness as a lifestyle community, as well as tourism and agriculture and viticulture, that would attract retirees, it would attract residents as well. And very, I hesitate to say acceptance, but when you look at the numbers in terms of forestry, mining, other sort of more resource-based, it seems like the residents of Lillooet see a different future than the economic past has been, and they're ready for it. So the sectors that were flourishing were the same sectors, not unsurprisingly, that were identified as the economic development priorities. So we can go to the next slide. We also probed desired amenities, what were residents looking for, and walking and hiking trails and parks and green spaces came out on top, as opposed to sort of more built-in infrastructure. Although in the narrative, the importance of the rec center, the pool, the programs at the rec center did also come through sort of loud and clear. And what makes Lillooet special and unique? Many comments, but in a nutshell, it's this combination of our unique environment, the climate, the environment, the landscapes, and the people. And the people, including a very strong Statlian presence that gives a diversity to and richness to living in Lillooet that a lot of the survey respondents reflected upon. Next slide. We also asked what kind of supports would help business owners and potential investors, wanting to probe where could we focus in economic development that would really make a meaningful difference. And again, you won't be surprised by many of these, but housing came out as a very strong priority, public transportation, more tourism experiences, local arts and performances that attract visitors for longer stays and create animation and vibrancy for downtown, improve downtown aesthetics and revitalization. And then on the process side, a supportive council, district staff bylaws, and a streamlined approval process, and mentorship, seed funding, and business incubation models, small business loans or other incentives to help entrepreneurs get off the ground. Next slide. Some of the additional thoughts, so this was an open-ended question, just sort of what else would you like to share about Lillooet's economic future? And some of the thoughts, these were the themes, housing availability and affordability, again, came forward as a concern, downtown revitalization, the importance of the hospital and doctors, like a real concern about losing doctors and losing the hospital. So again, I just reflect on the presentation we had earlier and the mayor's comments, how important it is to keep that as a really vital amenity in Lillooet, because that in the survey, that was also the expressed desire of the residents that completed the survey, and an important part of a future for Lillooet's economy that was founded in health and wellness. Starting with core primary care, the hospital and the doctors, but then expanding it to attract all sorts of other wellness practitioners. Strong support for locally owned and operated retail stores. They reflected on the importance of the rec center and more fulsome programming, including year-round indoor swimming pool, a dance studio, martial arts, programs for families and children. A lot of support for continued relationship building with the Statlium communities, and also support for environmentally sustainable practices. And as we develop our economy in Lillooet, doing so in a way that measures and considers how to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and use alternative energy sources. So that led to this framework for the future. And this is proposed, this is sort of recommended and still fully open for discussion. But reflecting on all of the input and advice from the Economic Development Advisory Committee, the survey findings, and the framework also went through a sort of detailed assessment of natural assets, cultural assets, the built environment in Lillooet, and looked at census data and all sorts of things, and said that there's a series of economic development activities that seem to make sense in a phasing. And they begin with these continued district investments and partnerships. There are foundational needs for the community that need to be addressed, and in fact are in council's work plan already. So the hospital doctor shortage, the housing strategy, downtown revitalization, amenity development, continued support for arts, culture, and heritage, and continued relationship building with the Statlium communities, that those things really are foundational to anything that we do in economic development. Then the next piece is business retention. What can we do to make sure that the businesses we have, we keep? So can we create a streamlined process for inquiries and approvals if someone is looking to come and perhaps take over a business, to buy out an owner who's perhaps moving on or retiring? How can we create a business-friendly environment? Also for new businesses that are interested in coming. So really perhaps looking at a one-stop shop for inquiries that come into the district, almost like a service, I forget what it's called, but like basically a one-stop shop for investor inquiries, through the economic development liaison role or some other form, so that we can help them navigate whatever processes and approvals might be necessary to set their business up. The next sort of short-term win appears to be in continued tourism development and promotion. So the campground improvements as a catalyst for longer stays, perhaps this bike, hike, two-bridge circle tour as a catalyst for longer stays, sustainable funding for Tourism Lillooet, which is a segue into looking at the 3% municipal regional district tax, taking a strategic look at signature festivals and events. What could we create or reignite as a signature festival and event? And then continuing to work as we have been doing over the past year and a half on a strategic approach to visitor information with the Historical Society, Miyazaki House, and Tourism Lillooet. And then reflecting then also on the agriculture and food processing opportunity in the resident survey, that was another priority area where opportunity was seen. Continue to support the great work that LAFS does on the food processing and cold storage. Support farms that are interested in adding an agritourism aspect. And then perhaps looking at a master plan for smaller ALR parcels of greenways and trails and wildlife corridors, and then being ready to go to an attraction campaign. So this is perhaps a more logical process than jumping right to an attraction campaign for small farmers or wineries that we realized in our discussions at the committee level and through the survey that there's maybe a bit more groundwork that needs to be done before we go out and sort of attract one and all to come and start a farm in Lillooet or start food processing in Lillooet. And then the last piece of what conceivably is a 3 to 5 year framework is around the wellness lifestyle migrants. But knowing that we need to make some of these foundational investments in, the hospital, downtown revitalization, additional amenities, perhaps that rec center renovation with, improvements to the pool facility, a cultural facility, and then we'd be poised to truly talk about our lifestyle and coming here. We will have addressed some of the housing challenges as well. So, again, just a recommended framework at this point, but it seems to be a more logical sort of progression of what the next several years in economic development could look like for Lillooet. So next slide, I think that's about it. Oh, phased approach, yeah. The details in the document basically lays it out over the next 4 years. And the last slide is, a few notes about regional collaboration quickly. The Circle Tour, because we always, I had the chance to present to NEDIC last week, and we're always looking at regional opportunities. So of course, all the work we're doing with the Statlium, but also the Circle Tour with Pemberton and the Bridge River Valley. And then we can talk about the MRDT as well. We go to the next slide. So this is the MRDT piece. I'll just segue into that and then just open it up for discussion. So we currently, the District of Lillooet and Area A and Area B as well, although I don't think there's any eligible accommodation in Area B. We're currently in the Caribou-Chilcotin Coast catchment for the 3% municipal regional district tax, which is charged on short-term overnight stays. They are the only region in the province to do this. Typically, there are like some 50 catchments in the province of BC. Most of them are around local government boundaries or one or two areas of a regional district. The Caribou-Chilcotin Coast is the only region and it goes, as you know, from Bella Coola, Williams Lake, and we are in the southern part of the catchment. And I don't want to in any way suggest that they don't do a good job, but being in the southern part of the catchment, we also have a lot in common with the Lower Mainland, Sea to Sky, and so there's an opportunity perhaps to look at carving out a new catchment and essentially building on the Range Beyond Range Circle Tour, where we tested the waters as a partnership between the catchment would be Village of Pemberton, Area C of the SLRD, and then Area A of the SLRD up in the Bridge River Valley, and then where we are in Lillooet, District of Lillooet in Area B. And we would carve out that area and collect the 3% MRDT, create a sustainable funding source for all three areas, and conceivably be able to hire a full-time staff person to represent all of us, which historically has been the challenge, is trying to undertake tourism promotion just using a volunteer base and never having any funding in the bank has been extremely challenging. So this, rough estimates in this catchment, we'd maybe collect $200,000 a year. We'd see some leveraging that we could do with Destination BC and others. So maybe we'd have a budget between $200,000 and $300,000 a year. we could have a full-time staff person and we could do some good marketing. So that is an alternative to being part of the larger triple CTA catchment that is sort of on the table and being discussed right now. At the end of the day, it's the accommodation sector has to support one or the other option and show that support on a petition. So it's not simply up to us, it is up to the accommodation sector and to say where they think they'll see more benefit in terms of how this money is governed and managed. So I think that's it. That's a lot of talking from me. I apologize. I'd really like to hear from you now to just get your thoughts on comments on where we've been and where we need to go.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any questions, clarification, council members? Councillor Hoppel, go ahead.
Through the mayor, I'd just like to say, Suzanne, that was really well done and informative, and it shows a lot of, hard work and dedication, and thank you. That's really great. I know that I feel that a lot of the strengths in Lillooet also come from the volunteers of our community and all the work that they do. And I know that we are always in need of more volunteers, as our current ones are, exhausted, and definitely we need to put that out to the public. But I too think that Lillooet is moving in a really great way, in that, just the way that there are new homes coming. There are new residential spaces coming, and I feel with that there'll be more businesses coming, and I really have a positive outlook that Lillooet is moving in a very great direction. So I think the future is very exciting, and you're right, we do live in an absolutely beautiful community with wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoppel. Any other questions, comments from council? Councillor Leach.
I have two questions. One regarding the MRDT, is it something that you're looking from direction from council to go and petition the accommodation sector for potentially carving out any region, or is it something that you're in discussion with the sector already?
Yeah, I think at this point, we're not looking for any direction from council. We're exploring it. At the end of the day, council will have to provide a letter of support to either the Triple CTA as the designated recipient and eligible entity. Those are kind of the terms out of the legislation. Or with this possible option, we would have to create a new society. There isn't a current society, because we wouldn't want to vest it in Tourism Pemberton or Tourism Lillooet. Like, it has to be a new society that would be reflective of the interests. A big piece of the success of this would be everyone feeling that they were equitably represented. So we'd have to create a governance model and likely a new society, although I hesitate to say that because we've got so many of them kicking around. But that had the governance model from sort of all the geographic areas. And if that was the preferred option, then the district would, through mayor and council, you would provide a letter of support in that direction. And so we're sort of discussing it still. I think we probably should test the waters ourselves with a few accommodators to see if they feel strongly for A or B, because at the end of the day, it's their signatures on the petition that are going to matter. So we're having sort of regular talks with Tourism Pemberton, Bridge River Valley, and Tourism Lillooet. And my recommendation to that group is going to be, let's each of us test it with a few of our accommodators and see if they have any strongly held views one way or the other. And then based on that, I think we'll have a better sense of, if it's worth sort of carving off the southern end and trying to do this ourselves. And not to say we wouldn't participate with Triple CTA. They would still have programs and we could buy into them and they would still represent us. So it's not like we burn that bridge in any way, shape, or form. We would still work alongside with them if we were to go in this other direction. So I think it's still a bit early to ask you for any particular direction. If you have thoughts and ideas, would love to hear them, but nothing official at this point.
All right, thank you. And then my second question, just sort of curiosity, because this MRDT, so the tax is collected on accommodation stays through hotels, motels, etc. Do Airbnbs, are they regulated to pay into this tax as well?
Yeah, so they are, that legislation, when they first started popping up, they didn't. And then the MRDT legislation was changed a couple years back so that now they are supposed to collect it. Now, some of them do. I would say, like so many things that we're challenged by enforcement is always, so in theory, Airbnbs are supposed to charge MRDT and remit it. In actuality, if they do or don't, I think there's very little enforcement of it. But across the province, they like a lot of some of them definitely do. So because those monies are identified separately by the Ministry of Finance, and when they're remitted back, they're actually earmarked because they can be put to alternative use. The majority of MRDT is intended for destination marketing, right? To generate more overnight stays. The money that comes from what they're calling accommodation platforms, so Airbnb, VRBO, and the like, if there is a desire to direct that towards affordable housing, that piece with a proper housing plan can be used for affordable housing.
Interesting. It's something I think for council to think about when we come to our zoning and what we want to allow in terms of Airbnbs and that when that piece comes up, because it could be detrimental to our accommodation sector. So thank you.
Any other questions, comments with Councillor Weed?
Hi Suzanne, nice to see you again. See you got your son off to school. He's probably home now. Last Thursday we had a discussion about Gold Country, and I know that Marcy had reached out to you. So I'm hoping that there'll be a response there somewhere.
Yeah, I will reach out to her this week and go through their programs.
Okay, and I was wondering if all the not-for-profits are under one umbrella, which was what we sort of first started talking about when all of this originated with you. So would they all still go for separate grant funding, or would there be like one pot of money and then somebody decides how to distribute it? I'm just a little curious on how that would work, or would they still each individually go for whatever grants they wanted? Because it seems like everybody's after this pot of money.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm not sure. I think we'd have to work through those details and, probably think about it in terms of the governance structure. If they were all sort of consolidated into one entity, ultimately, I guess it would be the board of directors that would have the responsibility for making those choices about what to apply for and where to direct funds. Yeah, it's probably needs a lot more conversation before we could land on a solution.
Thank you.
Hearing none, I want to thank you very much, Suzanne. Appreciate your diligent work and improvements to come to Lillooet. Economic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, folks, we'll move to item 4.1, adoption of committee of the whole minutes, meeting minutes. Someone move that the February 1st, 2022 committee of the whole minutes be adopted as presented. Councillor Leach, second Councillor Howe. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 5.1, proposed Silga resolution. Mr. Taylor, you wish to speak to that, or has it been exhausted?
Mr. Taylor, will speak to that.
Okay.
We've heard so much from Mr. Taylor over the last couple of
I
months.
like.
There'll be a lot more to come this year too.
It keeps my blood flowing, my heart is
Yes.
strong.
So, very similar to last year, and as it should be every year. This is for council to consider proposed resolutions to go through Silga, eventually hopefully the ABCM. We've got 3 here attached. Not to say there can't be more, but hopefully you've got it ready on paper right now. There's a deadline. So yeah, it's a standard process. I think you're all comfortable with it at this point. I'm not going to read the whole thing because, well, the first one we went over a year ago and didn't quite get through due to availability of the sponsor. So at this point, we just should say yay or nay, give staff direction. Do you want to have this included? There's actually a resolution to accept them all as is or amend them. So, can we do one at a time? All at once. Final lesson.
That's for sure. I know this thing. On the first one, I think Lori and Councillor Hopful and I had a discussion because Councillor Leach and I were under the assumption that we couldn't move it forward if nobody was there to speak on it. So, and if we just pulled it, then it could be put forward again this year. Do we have to go through all the, and then Councillor Hopful and I had a discussion, I'm not sure who she talked to, that we're researching whether we actually had to go through the whole process of Silga and the UBCM and all of that stuff, or whatever. You can update on this better than I.
It's okay. Yeah, go ahead.
If you've heard something,
Well, no, I just, I had talked to you and we just have to go through the whole thing again, and I'll make sure that I'm there for all the things, and if I need to speak to them, then we'll be available to do so.
that's my understanding, because even something that went through last year, conditions could have changed, or you may have melded into a new resolution covering different topics. So it makes sense. It'll probably just be easier this year.
Yeah.
So unless there's any changes to that first one there, I don't think the world has changed too much considering the topic there. But any tweaks you want to make, now's the chance.
Yep.
All right, that was good. Number 2, BC Forest Management and Wildfire Prevention Reform. The sponsor is Councillor Hopkins.
Well, yes, like, I wasn't gonna put this through, and the reason was, I wasn't going to move it forward because I talked to Brad Viss, and I was hoping that he could kind of come at it from the top level going down. If we wait through Silga, if we wait through UBCM, then it will already be in the middle of September and another season will have passed. Brad Viss actually texted me this morning and said that it was coming to the House of Commons and he will be speaking to it next week. So that's really great. So I think now that he said that, and he said, yep, go ahead with this, and then we'll kind of come at it like both ends. So I think that's going to work if council so supports us.
I do support it. I just have a couple of language changes on one of the paragraphs. So on the therefore be it resolved that the province of BC be requested to immediately create an all hazards agency that employs people full-time year-round to manage. I was just wondering if it might be more appropriate to put mitigate fire, flood, and floods as a part of the comprehensive forest restoration and management program. I don't know how important language is when coming to these things, but I just was curious what that worked better, because mitigate is to reduce something from large from happening, right? As we're managing, like, I mean, I know we're expecting all of these things to happen again, but.
So if I can I speak to that?
Yep.
Okay, so I had talked to Darren Oiki and how he explained it was more of, is he still on? No. Okay, was that currently what they do is they have one person in charge of fire, one person in charge of flood, one person in charge of what was the other one? Slides. So because they all are one after the other generally, now what Ontario did is they produced this all hazards agency. So when somebody becomes a part of this and works for it, they work not just in one sector, they work in all three. And they learn to manage those fires, the floods, and whatever happens with those. So it was kind of, I don't know if the wording is that important as opposed to, you know, what the meaning of the purpose is.
Yeah, so I agree that that's a good explanation of why that word is used. As well as Ross pointed out, in government lingo, managing includes mitigation.
Okay.
Not everything can be mitigated, but if it's possible, it is something that they manage.
I'm just curious, because when this gets to the floor to, you know, other municipalities in UBCM or hopefully the UBCM, you know, I've noticed that people are very nitpicky. They didn't want it to be.
And that would be my explanation, like, and that's why we want to have year-round people to learn and manage in an all hazards agency. So they're managing all the hazards that, you know, are on that forest floor.
Anything else, council? Number 3.
Well, just to point out too, number 2 and number 3, I will be asking you again, please provide some further rationale. So a lot of it is already contained in the whereases, but for example, the forest management one, you may be able to pull something out from the letter that went off to other.
Got it all written out right here, ready to go.
Those are the things, just almost paraphrasing very much was in the whereas, and just sort of
For sure.
plain English versus the still.
Exactly, the legal.
Emergency management program reform, do we do these policies?
Yes.
So we'll do it to.
Would you like me to say?
Give it to council, or is the best idea?
It is as written.
Well, when we went to the workshop at the fire hall, the gentleman putting it on with Chief Oiki, I can't remember his name, I do have a card at home, business card, had said that when there's a fire, a flood, some kind of a disaster in a community, and you need extra resources or to make those decisions like that, if they write they're only allowed to get approved quickly $10,000. Which probably wouldn't even rent a dump truck for 2 days, I'm assuming. So they usually put the requisitions in at $9,999, and hopefully they're approved within anywhere from 24 hours to a week. So he was suggesting that we approach the province on upping that scale so that the people that need these resources now don't have to worry about how they're going to pay for them later. Like that they would just know that anything under $50,000 would be covered by the province, you know, within limits. I mean, we're not going to buy $50,000 worth of beer to feed the fire workers. But yeah, it really made sense because he said they end up doing a lot of, your EOC person or director ends up doing a lot of requisitions for $9,999, so they just get stamped and approved rather than just making the decision and knowing that the funding is there.
So, just to go back into this, so that what you just talked about now is sort of the funding model. This drafted resolution carried a little bit further from conversations you and I had about it, in that it's almost like the all agencies idea for forest management, things around that. And then this that we were talking about was about instances, for example, in Lytton, where people actually struck by the trauma of the natural disaster themselves were then responsible for running the emergency operations. So one, they're struggling with the money. Two, they're struggling with, they don't even have a home themselves to live in, yet they're expected to manage this disaster. And so I think when we last spoke about expanding upon the funding challenges was that maybe, especially in rural communities, there simply isn't the staff or the resources, even in the community itself, to handle these disasters. So beyond just managing forests, floods, the roads out down the road, and somebody's got to take care of that. Right here in the community, if a fire has gone through, destroyed the community, where's the province? Right? And the province, as you heard during the floods, is saying each community is responsible for its own emergency program. You guys can ask for money, but you got to take care of it. And I think you heard that pretty loud and clear from your meetings. That's just not practical in every case.
Exactly, like you're responsible for your cleanup, you're responsible for so many things that the province just keeps pushing down onto the community that's in the middle of a disaster.
In the rationale part, because isn't there also when working, because, the province also it totes like the Red Cross support, and I know that there was difficulty even contacting Red Cross or even getting the support. Can we mention something in the rationale that there was significant delays reaching those bits?
Yeah, I think I could get some wording from Darren on that, because we've recently heard back from Red Cross that they're basically backpedaling on their offers to communities and saying that they need someone else to manage it. They simply don't have the expertise or resources to manage it at the scale that was asked of them. Again, that's where the province with their resources could come in.
Our fire chief had also mentioned, and I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but he had also mentioned that if they contract out the EOC person, the province will pay for it. But if we use, let's say, you or Mr. Taylor, it's
Ineligible.
ineligible for payment because you're an employee. So that doesn't exactly sit well with me, or so we should contract out to someone that doesn't actually live here possibly. I mean, that's going to come in from, let's say, Sycamoose or something, and they will get paid, but the people here in the community that work for the district, it's like their regular day of work. I'm not sure if overtime can be paid or not. That's something that I don't know.
No staff time can be paid. They will pay for backfilling the position at the rate that it's vacant. So if I hired Megan to work in the EOC as your communications person, we would pay her regular staff rate. We were working in the EOC, and then we contract somebody with UBC funding to backfill her position here at the Rec Center at her rate. I've had this conversation with UBC. It's a policy that's above them to change. And I bluntly spoke to the person for this region and said, so you would rather me hire a private contractor for $300 an hour to come from outside of our community to work in the EOC for communications than to pay a reasonable rate for a staff person to work there? And I said, yep, that's the policy. And they're blowing money in every community because of this, because that's the policy.
So can we not do a resolution, even a separate resolution to work on possibly changing that policy? It seems like there's a lot of wasted money in a lot of different provincial aspects to me.
Right. Another aspect to look at is the regional districts can get involved. You look at the staffing levels of SLRD and TNRD, you look at their budget. what, especially when it comes to Lytton, it really gets up my nose. The TNRD should be there directly helping. Look at their staffing level, look at their budget, you know? And that's something that maybe, I don't know whether we want to do it right now, but we have to say, they've got to take responsibility of the community. We have a seat at the table and we give them money. So I think, especially from an emergency management point of view, they have to come to the table.
So I can say some good news in response to that is that the SLRD did pass a budget to have an emergency management coordinator for the region. And the fire chief. So there will be some more support from them for these coordinating emergency response. But the legislation does put that responsibility on each local government.
I know. But the point is we can go for a change. And you look at the tribulations that the TNRD is going through right now, they can better spend their money elsewhere. Looking after one of their small communities is something that they should rise up to. And I'm not afraid to tell members of that either. I have told one already. So I don't know how it goes. Okay, any
Oh, I
more?
totally agree, between Lytton and Spence's Bridge, which is TNRD, it's just they were left there with nothing.
Well, look at their budget, look at the funds they have.
Yeah.
And the staffing levels, and that's the part. Same with our SLRD. You look at our staffing levels and their staffing levels. Anyway, not whining, but it's something we gotta consider.
There's
That's a
never
yes.
enough whining.
No, if I could suggest to council, whenever we see the last person in the room packing up, getting ready to go, try and speed it up a little bit so that I can at least thank the people for showing up. Okay, tongue in
We're
cheek.
comfortable with number 3?
Yeah, I am. How about you guys? Good? Okay.
Want to try to, sorry. It's a committee of the whole, so I'm going to be talking. So do we want to try to do a resolution about that AMDC policy for bank staff, or do we want to see if we can get one of these through, which may actually resolve that issue? If the province takes over the management of these functions, we don't have to worry about staffing. We don't have to.
Do you know the province taking that over?
That's scary.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I was
right.
thinking too. Yeah.
I'd rather not.
Just thinking in situations where it's like Lytton or Merritt, the director of public works for Merritt lost his house and he was asked to deal with the sewer company because that's his responsibility.
Perhaps in certain situations, but as an overall, I don't think that's a very good idea. Although I would like to see a policy change. How would we go about that?
That would be a brand new resolution.
Do you think that that would be worthwhile? Like, when we talk about the two options, which one do you think would gain us better yield?
The resolution for number 3 about emergency management program reform suggested as an opt-in service. So they're really small. There's communities like 500 people, right? So there may be communities that just absolutely want the province to take it over. Or in the case of Lytton, yeah, just disasters happen. Police province just step in and take care of it. We might decide one way or the other. So that was the idea on that one. For the policy change, I think that's a good thing regardless, because it is a waste of money how the NBC is doing it right now. They're paying to the teeth for these professional consultants in UC operations. Some of them are worth it, some of them are overpriced, but they're all that's available because the staff are already busy with the jobs.
And there's no real framework for what makes you consultant sometimes.
$100 an hour, we should go to school.
Right? I know.
Again.
So, but the deadline to get these all in the Silga, I believe, is
25th, I
25th.
believe. 25th.
we only have one meeting, so I'm gonna have to try to draft something quickly, and your chance to look at it will be next Tuesday.
And we should go for it.
I
it's
think
worth
we
a
should
shot.
go for it.
Okay.
If we're gonna leverage everything like this, because there's been so many communities that deal with this and that were affected, and it's so clear in their mind, they will, I think when reading it, they'll understand and be able to pinpoint where that staffing issue and that funding issue is happening. They'll be able to relate to it, and that's really what we want to get at, right?
And I think too, putting it on the table, we're just getting other people's opinions too.
Yeah.
It still has to be passed by everybody there. UBCM, if they like it, like it's a majority vote, right? So I think it's worth putting it on the table and just seeing where it goes. It's not gonna hurt, because it's not working now, so.
I'll put something together and it'll be included in the agenda for Tuesday.
The mayor will look forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor, how does this impact this resolution? Do we just hold off, postpone it?
No, council, please make this resolution for the ones that are attached to the agenda, and the CEO will take that as direction to bring another resolution to the agenda.
Because it addresses the report of February 4th, which is okay. Council is okay with that, and CIO will add one more for the next meeting. Right? Yes,
Oh, no, I was just voting.
okay.
I'll put it forward.
I was just seconding.
There you go. Speak
I
up,
would
will
like-
you?
I would like someone to move the facility resolution attached to the committee of the whole report dated February 4th, 2022 be forwarded to council for endorsement and be sent to the Southern Interior Local Government Association, I would assume, for consideration of inclusion at the 2022 Union of British Columbia Municipalities. Councillor Hopwell, second Councillor Weed. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Carried and aye. Thank you. Right. Somebody please move that the February 8th, 2022 committee of the whole meeting rise and report. Councillor Weed, second Councillor Lee. Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you all for showing up tonight, virtual and in person. Good meeting, guys.